Hey fellow Trek Chatters, I'm Pit Trekkie and welcome to another episode of Pittsburgh's Trek Chat. So today what I want to do is a review of Season 2, Episode 3 of Star Trek Picard called Assimilation. So basically this episode had a couple different stories that all fit into the whole of what this season is going to be, but went off in their own little separate ways to start solving the mystery. So basically they had to wrap up the part about the Confederation left at the beginning of the episode. Unfortunately, Elnor got killed by the Confederation officers from his shot. 7 and 9 tried to defuse the situation basically by trying to say it was a classified mission, but her husband did not agree. So our crew, our heroes, fought the Confederation officers, grabbed their phasers, and killed all of them, including the magistrate. So while that's all going on, Dr. Jurati is able to get the Borg Queen hooked into the ship. But they were the La Sirena was attacked by several not Federation but Confederation starships, 2 Nova class, 1 Streamrunner class, and that basically knocked out a lot of power on the ship. And also the Borg Queen managed to hook herself up to the ship and used a lot of power, a lot of energy to take them into a time warp around Earth's sun and got them to 21st century Earth. As they got to 21st century Earth, they completely lost power. The La Sirena ended up crash landing out near Los Angeles. Picard said that they crashed him at home, but that was never really explained. Elnor ended up dying from his wounds because there was no power to sickbay to help stabilize him. So obviously Raffi gets very upset about this whole situation because of the bond that the two had shared that we saw earlier in the season. Picard, at this point, is the only one who really wants to keep the Borg Queen alive. He's the only one who actually realizes that she's the one who knows where the Watcher is and when the divergence in time is. But everybody basically felt that they were done with the Queen. This really upset Raffi because she feels that Picard chose Elnor's death over the safety, in regards to the Borg Queen, that he wanted to keep the Borg Queen safe and not help Elnor. This led to another Raffi rant that we saw last season a lot of times, where she basically blamed Picard and Q together of causing problems with people and that they've been jousting for years. And Picard didn't overly defend himself. He just said, oh, well, you know, it's not me, it's Q. So Raffi decided she was going to go look for the Watcher herself. She said that she found the tallest building in Los Angeles, the Mark Ridge Industrial Tower, and that she was going to go there to try to find the Watcher. She said that if Q's involved with this, the Watcher has got to be somebody who's out of time and has some sort of technology that they might be able to read. Because she was so emotionally unstable about Elnor's death, 7 and 9 and Raffi, or not Raffi, but Rios decided they were going to go with her. Picard and Jurati said that they were going to stay on board the ship. They were going to try to repair and revive the Borg Queen. After the trip around the sun for the time warp, it drained her, and she was draining the La Sirena of its power to try to re-energize herself. Before that happens, Jurati and Picard kind of have some minor disagreement about. Dr. Jurati feels that either she or Picard could get hooked up to the Borg Queen and kind of help with repairing her so that she can actually communicate. Said that she was actually trying to communicate, but she couldn't do it orally at that point. Picard said that he could not hook himself to the Borg Queen because he had been part of the collective and she would assimilate him in minutes. So Jurati offers to hook herself up to the Borg Queen because she doesn't know Jurati, to try to help with the repairs. Led to a little argument briefly, but finally Picard relented. So that's kind of where the divergence in the storylines go. So focusing a little bit on Picard and Jurati. So Jurati gets hooked up to the Borg Queen with an assimilation tubule. She has her conscious part go and work with the Borg Queen trying to repair her, but the subconscious stays behind and kind of talks with Picard. It talks about how the Borg Queen's kind of going through her mind and learning about her and tapping into different emotions that she has. And at one point she actually yelled a lot of anger and bile at Picard. Not exactly sure where that came from, but she also said that sometimes she likes to argue with Picard because she wishes Picard was her father. The Borg Queen ends up starting to take over Jurati, so Picard pulls the plug with the assimilation tubule. And we find out that the Borg Queen has found some sort of longing in Jurati, a longing that she has not felt that deep in a long time. We also get Picard and the Borg Queen communicating with each other verbally. Basically, the Borg Queen wants to make a deal about about her letting him know, or the crew know, about who the Watcher is and where they can find him, and when the divergence in time is. But the Borg Queen wants to negotiate, so she says that he has to put something on the table. Picard says, we already did, Elnor, he passed away. So what she said was that she would settle for the ship, so she tries to take over La Sirena at that point. And what ends up happening is Jurati wakes up, and the Queen tries to say that she, again, has all this information. And Jurati confirmed that the Borg Queen had all this information about the Watcher, but while Jurati was inside the mind of the Borg Queen, she was able to grab the coordinates of where he was at. She filed it in the La Sirena under what was something like, shit I stole from the Borg Queen, I think is what she said. And so the Queen was really upset about that because she wasn't aware that that was taken. But it was also alluded to that Jurati knows the time of the divergence, it's just she couldn't piece it together, but she said that she would. So that pretty much ended it right there with that part of the episode. Moving forward, so because there was very little power to the transporters, they weren't able to beam Raffi, Rios, and 7 of 9 directly to the Mark Ridge Industrial Tower. They were just kind of in the vicinity. So they all beam into 3 different places. So Raffi first kind of beams into a street in Los Angeles, and then 7 of 9 beams into some similar area where a little girl sees her and actually thinks she's a superhero. Raffi ends up getting into a sanctuary district where they try to rob her of her money. She disarms the culprit and takes that money. 7 of 9 observes what's going on. And Raffi notices that 7 seems very comfortable in these current surroundings and doesn't seem to know why. So they end up making their way to the Mark Ridge Industrial Tower. They kind of they manipulate a guard to let them go up to the highest peaks. And they're able to hear the clicking of a comm badge. They see it on the tricorder. That links us to Rios' story. So Rios ended up beaming down in the air, and he was like 3 stories up from a building. He wasn't able to get his grip, so he fell 3 stories and fell flat on his face, basically unconscious. So he was, and a good Samaritan, I guess you could say, took him to a clinic where they help people who don't have legal documentation or papers or money. And he was helped to recover by a doctor named Teresa. And we find out that her son actually has Rios' comm badge. So Rios tries to negotiate with the little boy named Ricardo to actually get the comm badge back with a plate of peanut butter cookies. He ends up getting his badge back, but right around the time he's getting ready to leave, immigration shows up, ICE, and actually arrests the doctor and Rios. And that's pretty much where the episode ended. So I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was very interesting. We learned some new things about Rios. We learned some things about the Queen. Some interesting stuff going on with Jurati. So here's some of the likes that I really found about this episode. So the time travel sequence was very similar to what we saw in Star Trek 4. But instead of us getting like this kind of hallucination and seeing these big heads and this mannequin floating around, basically what we saw was the crew kind of in like a euphoric state. All of them were kind of smiling. Things seemed to be kind of going in reverse. I noticed that a tear in Dr. Jurati's eye was actually going up in one quick scene. So it was a nice tie-in to Star Trek 4, something very similar. Also, it kind of ties in with when they arrived at Earth. In Star Trek 4, you hear Spock saying, judging by the pollution in the atmosphere, I believe we've arrived in the latter half of the 20th century. Well, Dr. Jurati kind of says the same thing. She says that she talks about the pollution on the planet, and that there's no nuclear fallout, so that meant that there couldn't have been at World War III yet. So a nice little tie-in to that as well. The other things I liked, there was also the connection to the Deep Space Nine third season 2-parter Past Tense 1 and 2. Obviously that's where the Gabriel Bell riots occurred in a sanctuary district, and that was a key moment that needed to happen, and Sisko had to actually take on the role of Gabriel Bell after he was killed because they were there. to make sure that the timeline was moved the way it was supposed to. So I don't know if there's going to be any real connection to that going on the rest of this season. Apparently this episode takes place 2 years before the Third World War. So who knows how much stuff of Star Trek history is going to come up in the next 7 episodes. Another really thing that I liked about this was we got to see the Nova class and the Streamrunner class ships again. I love this season how they're actually putting in canon ships from the past. And it shows that they listen to the fans and they want to see this stuff. They want to see that continuity. And I think Season 2 of Picard is doing that very, very well with a lot of these visuals or, Easter eggs, whatever you want to call it. Another story that I really liked was the story that Rios told the doctor, Teresa, about how when he was 8 years old, his mother was teaching different pilots about skills, and he snuck into a simulator, and he actually scored higher than any cadet, I guess you can say, ever scored. It's a nice little story about how his mother was proud of him for that. Curious whether or not if he was raised by a single mother or if he was in a 2-person family and mom just happened to be there that day. I'm sure maybe we'll learn a little bit about Rios going forward, but it was a nice little piece about his past. We also see the hints of an immediate attraction between Teresa and Rios, so we'll see how that goes and how that plays into his ended relationship with Dr. Jurati. Another thing that I really liked about the episode was the creepiness of the Borg Queen. The fact that she was on the floor of the La Sirena at the beginning of the episode crawling around, and Jurati got really scared and she said, "Let me," and she has the tubules come out and she has her arms out like this and she goes up, and then she starts talking about the needing to repair the past and moving forward. Just very good. It was a really creepy scene. They also had the Borg music cues from Star Trek First Contact that played at 2 different times during that scene, which was really awesome. Let's see here. I also like that we're learning even more about Jurati, about the Borg Queen tapping in and feeling that longing that Jurati wants in life. And it kind of made me start thinking a little bit. Jurati seems almost drawn to the Queen. Yes, there's fear there, but she seems almost drawn to wanting to be near her. And the fact that the Queen keeps talking her up makes me wonder if somehow the Queen is going to try to seduce her for the Borg. So I'm wondering if we're going to see that, if Jurati is going to want to try to join the Borg collective, because they would offer that longing that she has been looking for, that the single-minded thoughts and just the connection. So it'll be interesting to see where Jurati's arc continues to go from here. Let's see here. Another little like that I saw, and it probably didn't mean a whole lot, but when 7 of 9 was getting dressed on board the La Sirena to go on their away mission, did you notice she was looking at herself and a lack of Borg implants in a hexagonal-shaped mirror? It reminded me very much of the mirrors that were used on the Enterprise in the original series, but I think theirs had like a handle or a tail underneath. But they were inside those spinning walls. But it reminded me of those mirrors. I don't know if that was intentional or if that just happened to be like a coincidence. But if they did put that in there, I thought that was a kind of neat little tie. All right, so there are some things that I don't like about this episode. Not many, but just a few. Raffi blaming Picard for the issues going on with Q. I didn't think that was fair. And I was like, oh great, here we go. We're going to have angry Raffi telling off Captain Picard one more time. I know they had it that she was in a very emotional state, and she's a very emotional person. And that's what I like about Raffi, is that she's got a lot of passion for people and situations. But Q is the one who was causing this whole entire situation. It was Q who had been bothering Picard for these 30 years, on and off, causing these problems. It wasn't Picard who was causing people's lives to be played with. Picard was just kind of like the game piece, and people kind of had to come along with it, forced by Q. So I thought it was out of place for him to be told off, and basically he cowered down to her. If you notice, the whole time she's ranting and raving, he's looking down like, yes ma'am, yes ma'am, yes ma'am. It just was out of place. I think it's good that there's somebody who can talk to Picard and be firm and realistic with him. We didn't see that as much in The Next Generation with his crew, but I think sometimes Raffi takes it a little bit too far. And also there was the whole thing with Jurati. Again, she was starting to tell him off to some degree in her self-conscious. We don't need Captain Picard or Admiral Picard to be constantly told off. They make it sound like they're angry with him and that they have like lingering issues with him that need to be addressed. I feel it's disrespectful to Picard's character to constantly be ranting and raving at him when these kind of situations occur. So I hope that that's about it for the rest of the season on that. I also kind of got cringed a little bit with the shit I stole from the Borg Queen line. Basically because it's one thing that I don't really like about New Trek is they kind of bring up like sayings from the 21st century to discuss things. It does kind of fit Girardi's quirky personality in this situation, but it doesn't feel like it belongs in Trek, at least to me. She could have, come up with some other different name that might have sounded more Star Trek-like or more professional. But again, it's not the end of the world. It's just kind of was a cringe moment for me. That's all. And then the other thing that I really didn't like about the episode was some of the return of the violence. I'm not against there being fist fights and things similar to that in Star Trek. I mean, go back to the original series. I mean, Kirk and the crew were fighting constantly during those 3 seasons. So I'm not against that. But when we were in the beginning of the episode and the crew was fighting the Confederation officers and they managed to get their guns, they didn't check to see if they were on stun or not. And I guess in the heat of the moment you really wouldn't do that, but they automatically just shot them and killed them. And even after the first one, you would think that they would have been like, okay, we don't want to kill these people, let's just stun them. That's not what happened. They just killed every single one of them instantly. It just kind of reminded me back to the violence that happened in the first season of Picard in certain areas, like with when 7 and 9 killed her supposed ex-girlfriend as revenge over Icheb. I just don't want to start seeing a whole bunch of gruesome, meaningless death in Star Trek. Let's try to stay away from that and try to keep it a little bit optimistic. But like I said, a little bit of violence in Star Trek it's always happened. But that was just a particular part that kind of made me another cringe moment, basically. Now here's some of the questions that I have going into episode 4, which I'm going to be watching after I film this. So, who is the Watcher? Is this going to be a character who we know, like Guinan or somebody else? Who is this Watcher? Is it going to be somebody new that Q kind of invents? Is it Q himself, playing a different role? We don't know yet. So that'll be cool to see. One thing, the question is, will Eleanor come back to life if time is restored? They kind of left that ambiguous in the episode. They addressed it, but Dr. Girardi says she doesn't know. Raffi is going on the assumption that it will restore his life. And again, that's fueling a lot of why she wants to find the Watcher and get this resolved ASAP. What will happen to Rios now that he's in custody of immigration? The only thing we really know is that he's going to have his picture taken. And he'll have like the little, I don't know what it is, clipboard or board that you use when you get a mugshot. We also know that 7 and 9 and Raffi rescue him from some sort of what looks like a bus. So there's going to be some attempt to go and get him, and he'll be probably released at some point. One thing that Picard said was his total assimilation took several hours, which I thought was really interesting because I thought that the assimilation process with the Borg, once a victim was injected with the nanoprobes through the assimilation tubules, happened almost immediately. Not instantly, but within several minutes. That's the way it always kind of looked in First Contact, in Voyager. The only time it seemed a little different than that was in the second season episode of Enterprise, Regeneration, where it took several hours to assimilate Phlox and those other people, I guess the Torellians. I can't remember if that was the race or not. That was the only time it seemed like it took forever. But what I took from what Picard said was they might be able to become Borg instantly, but it takes several hours for everything to change with the consciousness, maybe to add more technology in the body. We don't know. We've never actually seen like an actual full assimilation go on, just bits and pieces. But I thought that was an interesting piece of new Borg Trek trivia for all of us fans. Why does 7 and 9 look so comfortable in 2024? Raffi commented on it in the Sanctuary District, and 7 and 9 even commented on it when they manipulated that security guard at the Mark Ridge Industrial Tower to actually let them up. She said, nobody's ever felt comfortable with me before. And again, that ties back to Season 1 where there was all that anti-Borg rhetoric going on, and also at the season premiere of season 2 of Picard, when that alien was fighting 7 and 9 on the La Sirena and talking about her Borg face. So I'm hoping they'll bring a little bit more up about that. We'll try to see why that's going on, why she's feeling so content. And then, like I said, will Jurati have any longing for the Queen or the Borg collective? The fact that the Queen actually said to Jurati, "You've impressed me," and that's something that doesn't happen very often. If you think about it, there's probably Picard was probably somebody who also impressed the Queen, and why he was probably picked to be Locutus all those years ago. So I'm wondering what the Queen's angle is going to be with Jurati, because there's always an angle when it comes to the Borg Queen. So those are basically my thoughts of episode 3 of Picard Season 2, Assimilation. If you have any comments about the episode, or you want to respond to anything that I said, please put comments down below in the episode, in the comment section. Obviously, you can go to my channel. Just go to youtube.com, type in Pittsburgh's Trek Chat, and you can go directly to my channel. You can also follow the show on Facebook, facebook.com/Pittsburgh's Trek Chat. You can also follow the show on Twitter at PGH Trek Chat. Until then, may yins live long and prosper.